Before I start, I just wanted to tell you that contained within this review video is a pretty cool coloring tip for how to color objects that are in water. I hope you like it. And I'd like to extend an invitation to you to my Facebook coloring gallery, link below. Hope to see you there. Hi, it's Dia. Today I'm going to use this image from my coloring book called The Buns Artist Edition that's available on Etsy. Actually, all the products that I mentioned will be in links below this video in the information box, including the pencils that I'm going to use today, which are by Staedtler, and it's the 24 Noris color set. And I found them in Staples as I was just looking through everything, and they were on sale for under $4. So I thought that was pretty amazing. So let's get started. Now there's 24 pencils in this set, and on the cover there's Johanna Basford's book Lost Ocean, and it says use the Noris Colored Pencils for her coloring book Lost Ocean. So I got the feeling that they were for undersea kind of scenes. So I picked a picture from the buns that did have some water in it. So my first impression as I used the pink was that they were really pigmented. Well, I should say, let me rewind for 2 seconds. I thought the pink was super pigmented because sometimes light colored pencils that aren't expensive, like the super fancy ones, have tons of pigment, and the less expensive ones don't have a lot. But that pink was great. So I continued and I went to the brown to shade this little guy, as you can see, and I didn't think that the brown had as much pigment as the pink did. So I didn't dislike it, but it wasn't as impactful. It wasn't as bright. So then I started to color the branch, and I used several shades of brown and that sort of, I can't say it's mustard, almost like a goldenrod kind of yellow. That goldenrod also super pigmented. So there's a little bit of a difference between some of the pencils. There was really no rhyme or reason because some of the dark ones were pigmented and some of them weren't, and vice versa. So at first I was kind of wary of the set, but I have to say, as I used it, I started to like it more and more, and I'll tell you why a little bit later. Actually, I'll tell you one of the reasons why now, because I'm very impatient, and I'm sure some of you are too. I used the pencils as they were right out of the box. I didn't sharpen them beforehand, and they kind of reminded me a little bit of a mixture of Crayolas and Guanghui. They were a little bit more pigmented than Crayolas, but they're kind of hard. They're on the harder side, where the Guanghui is a little bit softer. So they're an interesting combination of the two of them. So in the beginning, like I said, I was using them straight out of the box, not sharpened, and they weren't crumbly. They weren't really anything like outstandingly good or outstandingly bad. But then once I sharpened them, they were much better. In fact, they held a point so well that I started to really like using some of them, especially the darker colors. When I get to the water part, I was kind of like, oh, you know, you can't. I was going to tell you that you can't really do too much blending or going over, but you can. The trick is that you have to have it very sharp. Also, by using this set, I came to realize that not one set is probably perfect for anyone. This set is probably great for somebody who has a heavier hand and likes to get very intense colors very quickly. I can't say that they layer as well as Prismacolors or Polychromos, but then I don't think anything really does. So I used pinks and sort of a dark mauve and a purple to do the raspberry, and I left some of the areas white where I thought the sun would reflect. Now, on this leaf, I pushed very hard and I drew in veins, and I took the lightest green and went over the top because I wanted to see if I could do that trick that I sort of accidentally discovered a couple of months ago. And you can. The green is light enough and the yellow is intense and hard enough that you can push and form sort of an indentation in the paper. So as you can see, the yellow veins stand out. I do prefer the Guanghui pencil for this, but this worked pretty good. So if you were going to buy this 1/24 set of pencils, you could get a pretty decent picture out of it because it literally goes from pure white all the way to jet black. Now, I did at some point use the white, and it wasn't my favorite blending pencil, but it did work. Now here I started to color in the seeds and the pomegranate itself. There's about 4 different reds in the set. A couple of them are similar to one another, and it depends on actually what you consider red. There's an orange red in there that could either fall under the definition of red or orange, and sort of a darkish, not quite blood red, but a very deep brick, or maybe burgundy would be better. So I would say probably altogether in the red category there's 4 or 5. None of them are super intense, and to get them intense you have to push pretty hard. Now I'm going to jump right there. So you can see there's a few different reds that I used for those seeds. And I did add a little bit of dimension there, or I tried to, but as you can see, the colors, the reds aren't that intense. So what I decided to do here is to go over almost the whole area of the pomegranate with the color that I thought was the closest to the base of the whole pomegranate. And I can't tell you what colors they are because there's no names and there's no numbers on this set. One of my favorite things to draw of all times is apples, regular apples. And this pencil reminded me, or these 2 red pencils that I'm using here, reminded me of the Crayola red that I almost use every single time I draw fruit, because I sort of lay it down first and get a real nice sort of hard base so it's not too intense. And this is kind of what that reminded me of. I added a little bit of purple and a little bit of shading because those fruits aren't perfect and the skin looks mottled a little bit, and it's got browns and purples and even a little bit of black and yellow in there. Now I'm taking this color, which ended up to be kind of an interesting color to me because I used it for sand and dirt and shading. So there's no real sort of neutral beige, and that's the closest thing. So that color you would probably be able to use for flesh or sand, so things like that. So you would probably have to modify a little bit and work around that. So I wanted to use all the greens. I wanted to use all the pencils in this video. So I'm using, I think there's 4 greens. There's actually 3 true greens and then 1 green where the barrel kind of indicates that it's almost like a teal or a turquoise, but it is more like a forest green. So I used all of them, and those leaves are tiny, so I just sort of filled in the areas so you could see what I was doing and what the colors actually looked like. So here I'm just going back in and I'm using some more of the browns because once again I just wanted to use all the colors, and I wanted to make the outside of that fruit look a little bit more realistic. Now I decided I was going to go back in and use those reds and see if I could get it to look more intense and to see how intense those reds would actually get. I had to push pretty hard, but as you can see, it did get a little brighter. And oh, here I'm using, I can't remember if that's the gray or the black, but I'm going in between the seeds to give it a little bit more dimension, because in between some of the seeds there would be spaces and there would be shadows. Here's that brighter red, and I am pushing a bit harder, and as you can see, it did show up quite a bit more. I went over it a couple times and pushed pretty hard. Now this was the part that I couldn't wait for, because these pencils were supposedly specifically for a book called Lost Ocean. So I wanted to use the blues and that sort of aqua color to see what I could do with the water. In the picture, as you can see, I tried to make it look like there were little reflections and some movement in the water. So I tried to use the different color pencils to sort of keep that illusion going. Now right about here is where I figured out that sort of teal aqua color is more of a forest green. And I was wishing it was a little bit more Caribbean for the sake of the water. I used the darkest blues on the water behind the cattails because I figured it would be in a shadow and it would appear darker. Now here is a rock, and I used the browns, and I used that sort of flesh sand color and a little bit of the mossy green, which I love that color. It's very sort of algae-ish or like turtle green. It's very botanical. Love it. So as you can see, I'm still working on the water, and I was kind of going back and forth, and I had in my head that I wanted to use all the blues, of course, and then I was going to go in afterwards with either the Signo pen, or I have a brand new, I think it's called Posca. I had been hearing so many things about this Posca white pen. Yeah, Posca. And so I bought it in the size of 0.7 millimeters, and in a little bit I'll be using that on the water, and it really made such a cool difference. And I would recommend, if you possibly can, either get a Posca or a Signo Uniball, although I used to say that the Signo was my absolute favorite, and now I think that I have found my new love. It's the Posca. I wanted to use some more of the pink to get a real true idea of how intense it was, because my first impression on the little ears on the bun was that it was super intense. And then when I used it on these flowers, I still thought it was probably intense, but not as intense as it was in that little tiny area. And I was just wondering if I felt like it was that intense, because that area was so small. I just kept going back and forth and back and forth. So then I started to use the greens on a bigger area on those cattails, and yes, there are only 3 greens, well, 3.5 if you consider that other color. So I added some yellow underneath, and I was able to create a few more colors. And right about here I was thinking, you can't really go over the greens that well with the other greens. But then later on, like I said earlier in the video, I sharpened some of those points, and you can go over areas that you've already laid down color on, as long as you have that super sharp point. Now I started to use that sort of light flesh sandy color for the sand, and it wasn't dark enough in my opinion to sort of give it even a sandy look. So I did end up going over later with a very light brown to give it more texture and slightly more detail. So I colored in some of the water with the side of the pencil, and I'm going to use Turpenoid now and just a regular brush, and I'm going to see how these pencils blend using mineral spirits. So right off the bat, the reds looked better. They looked a little more intense, and the colors did blend together really nicely. And the other thing, once I went over these areas in the pomegranate and on the water, and I went back in with the pencil felt really smooth, and the colors looked more intense, and they did dry even more intense. So you'll see later on in the picture at the very end, as you can see here too, the blues look brighter, they look smoother. So I would highly recommend using the Turpenoid or any kind of mineral spirits that you like to blend them. So about here, I started to get used to the pencils, and it did take some getting used to. They were different than any pencils that I've ever used, and like I said before, the more I used them, the more I liked them. And as I was using them, of course, if you like something, you want to play with them more. And this is kind of what happened here. I knew that I could get better results because I got the feel of it. Or I got the feel of them, I should say. Now here's the cool tip I wanted to tell you about that I mentioned in the beginning. As you can see, I'm drawing underneath the cattails into the part that would actually be in the water. And it just sort of makes it more realistic because your view of that plant wouldn't stop at the water. I mean, unless the water was completely murky, but as you can see here, the water is blue, so you would still be able to see some of that plant beneath the surface of the water. So it's not a reflection, it's the actual plant going under. Reflection's a little bit different. So quickie tip, but it makes a big difference. Now I'm taking the green, and I just wanted to show you that you can go over the top of it and get a bit of detail with this set of pencils, especially if you sharpen it, which is what I did right here, and it made all the difference in the world. I sharpened it also below when I was doing the water, and now it's the same thing. The colors seem much more intense and you can get that fine detail going. And here I'm using that same color going back on the other side and getting some detail on top of one or two layers. So that worked out nicely. I also went over the left edges of the plants because the light source would be sort of coming from the right, above right. Now I sharpened the darkest blue that's in this set, and I went over to add some detail in the water, and it made me very happy. And right about here again, I was realizing I would definitely, not that I would definitely, but I feel differently about the pencils. In the beginning, I was sort of this way, that way. At about this point, I was into it. I was having good results. I do have to say they're not as bright as, like I said before, Prismacolors or Polychromos, but it's kind of cool that they came in a set that sort of highlights or allows you to have the complete colors that you would need for a scene near the water or possibly under the water. Now, that being said, if you do have a bigger set, you can pick colors from your set if you wanted to use a limited palette. Now you can see what a difference the sharp point on that darker blue made. Now here's that same trick with the rock. The rock would also be submerged into the water, so you would take a darker color, one of the colors that was in the rock, and color underneath, because just like with the plants, you would still see part of the rock under the water. And it doesn't have to be perfect by any stretch of the imagination, because water changes everything. Refraction changes it. It looks a little distorted. Sometimes it doesn't even look like it's going in the same direction, so don't worry about it too much. So I have a pretty good idea at this point, and I hope you do too, of how the pencils work. So I decided to see how they would react with either a white Signo pen or a Posca pen. The Posca I had never used before, like I said before. So the Posca had big shoes to fill because, as if any of you have seen any of my videos, you know I like the white Signo pens quite a bit. So I followed the directions on the Posca pen, and it said shake it up, and you can hear there's a little ball in there. I hope you can hear that. And I didn't shake it up too much, and then you have to push the point until you see some of the white paint or whatever it is come down. And I'll tell you what happened in a second. So first I used the Signo, and it was okay. It was a little see-through. So I waited for a couple seconds, then I couldn't wait to try the Posca. So anyway, back to the Posca. When I first started to use it, it seemed a little see-through also, meaning a little bit transparent. So I don't know if I didn't shake it up enough or what, or maybe you just have to kind of get it going first. But as I used it, the white got more and more opaque and I fell more and more in love with it. The Signo pen is perfect for little dots, little stars in the sky, but whenever I would try to make like a nice line or a swooping area, it wasn't the best. This, on the other hand, is perfect, basically. Well, nothing's perfect, but once that white actually started to come down and the more I used it, the more I liked it. It made perfect little white dots. Every once in a while you have to push the tip to get some of the white product down. So I used a little piece of paper. I didn't want to push it on the actual piece of art because, you know, if you're actually doing something that you really want to keep forever, you wouldn't want a big blob to happen. So what I did was I went around the areas of the very edge of the water where maybe there would be a little bit of lapping or reflection possibly. And then I liked it so much I started to use it all over the place. I used it on the seeds of the pomegranate. I used it on some leaves just to see how it felt, and it was great everywhere. And then I ended up going back into the water and making even more details and more reflection, and I really liked it, so I highly recommend the Posca. I'll put the link below. So in this next part, I am just going back and forth with the darkest blue in the set and the Posca pen. I put some of the dark blue down on purpose so I could go over the top of it with the Posca because you could see the white even more the darker the area was. Now I'm going back in again to make that swirly area a little bit more detailed. And if any of you are wondering where I'm, what I'm using to sharpen the pencils to get that really awesome point, it's a handheld Mitsubishi KH20, and I've talked about it before. I love it. I bought the red one. It looks like a ladybug. I'll put the links for that below. Also, I think it's a decent price and it lasts forever. So I really started to like the way the water looked at this point, and it's my saying, you know, just keep on going. If you don't like the way it looks, you're probably not finished. Just keep on going and don't worry about it too much. I took the Posca pen, I went over, I made swirls, I made doodles, and I just had a whole lot of fun, and I hope you guys are having fun with coloring too. So thank you for being here with me. I'm so glad that you all joined me. Like I said before, all the links will be below. I hope if you like this video, you'll either share it with somebody that you think might like it also, and give me a thumbs up. And I want to thank all of you who subscribe to me. I really appreciate it. And again, I'm glad you're here. So that's about it for now. And of course, I'll have more videos soon. And that's it. Have a great day. Thank you. And I'll see you soon. Bye. Surprise! Thanks for watching to the end. For those of you who did, I have a mini giveaway. I'm going to be giving away the set of Staedtler pencils that I just used and the Posca pen. All you have to do to enter is share this video and give me a like and comment underneath this video. I love your surprise giveaways. And that's it. You're in. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you want to pass along the secret information to somebody that you know loves coloring and you think would like this giveaway, I'm all for it. Go for it. And I'm so excited that you're part of one of my secret giveaways. Thank you so much. Glad you're here. Good luck. Bye.